This week on the YA Rebels, we're talking about our writing bucket list, the stuff that we really want to get to but just haven't yet, and plan to before we kick the bucket. I try very hard not to kick the bucket. Every time I do, the blood sloshes out. And then the neighbors want to know what that red stuff is on the sidewalk. I don't have time for that.
10% luck, 20% skill, 15% concentrated power of will, 5% pleasure, 50% pain, and 100% reason to remember the name.
So far, in my YA career, I've written something that's sort of pseudo-horror. It has horror elements, but it has fantasy elements and stuff like that. And what I'm writing now is a straight-up horror book. So I've written those two things. I've written short stories that are like both fantasy, and I've written adult stuff. I've written very adult stuff. I've written a lot of different things. So what's left for me to write? I have an idea. After I finished up Velveteen, and it's by no means considered a series by my publisher. It's a trilogy in my head, but it's not really moving forward unless the sales are big enough for them to feel like it's warranted. I'm not sure how Goodreads works, but I understand that there's a Velveteen 2 and 3 listed on there, and those are not, I have not seen a contract for either of those books, so I don't know. But what I did have to do when I sat down to start my second book, I had to pitch some books to them about like what I thought I could work on next. And the one book that was like rose to the top is the horror book, but the second book is the one that I'm going to say is on my bucket list. And it is something that is very near and dear to my heart. It almost crushed me that it didn't rise to the top of the choices, but I'm hoping that one day we're going to get it there. And basically it is a combination of that campy 80s classic about themed gangs roaming a dystopian New York, The Warriors. A pitch-black comedy retelling of Little Red Riding Hood starring Reese Witherspoon as a foul-mouthed juvenile delinquent on the run from a serial killer on the freeways of LA. Yeah. Claustrophobic and hopeless, vampires turning into pack animals. If I can even capture half of that without the vampires and a completely different kind of monster, I will have something. 30 Days of Night was a great graphic novel and a pretty good horror movie. Yeah, that's what I'm calling it, Flaming Creatures. So yeah, it's not exactly vampiric. There's an element of that where there's some feeding going on, but it's not exactly in the sense of like vampires drinking blood or anything like that. It's just the closest kind of example I had, you know, in terms of the gore that would be involved in it. But overall, it's a comedy. That's the thing. I think at this point, there's so much dystopian and apocalyptic fiction going on in YA that it's ripe for some comedic take. And I don't do parody. I don't like to make fun of stuff in a sort of jocular, you know, jokey way, but I like to do it in a really dark, satirical way. So, yeah, things are gonna get dystopian up in here, y'all, or not, depending on if the people are gonna pay for it. I don't know. If not, some heads might be in that bucket. That sounded like a threat. Probably not the best thing for